Make sure. Okay, just trying to see that I'm live here. Sorry about that. Okay, just trying to see that I'm live here. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. So we're good. Sorry about that. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's having a good week. And yeah, we got a great show today. We're gonna obviously be talking about the Yankees as they reported the spring training this week, of course. Um, and pitchers and catchers reported today, which is always one of the best days of the year. And we will talk also about some reasons for optimism about the New York Yankees um, as we enter the 2026 season, and some reasons why I think we should be optimistic about this Yankee team this year. Um, We'll also touch on the Super Bowl. Seahawks obviously destroyed the Patriots on Sunday to win Super Bowl 60. We'll discuss on some things related to the Super Bowl and kind of how some of that can kind of tie into the New York teams and tie into the Giants and things that they're doing. And then we'll obviously end the show talking about the Knicks and some of my thoughts on them, as they obviously dropped a very tough game last night um, to the Indiana Pacers, and we will discuss that as well. Yeah, so let's get into it. So Colin Coward has this. Colin Coward has this phrase. He says, anything in sports you can kind of um, describe in 3 words, and he calls it the 3 word game. And I think that the 3 word game for the 2026 New York Yankees is very simply run it back. That is the 3 word game for the 2026 Yankees. The Yankees this year are running it back. And I think that I wanted to address this at the top of the show because I think it is interesting when you look at the way, you know, we've gotten to the end of the offseason here, right? And the Yankees obviously, there could be a couple smaller moves. They could do a few more things. But the reality is the Yankees are pretty much done making moves. There's probably going to be no big additions to the Yankees as we go into the start of the season. And I think I just wanted to kind of comment on the top of the show about the Yankees offseason and give my overall thoughts on it. The Yankees running it back. The Yankees running it back is not a good idea. And I'm going to give you the reasons why I don't think it's a good idea. And the number one reason is the bullpen is still not good. And you look at the bullpen last year, prior to the July 31st deadline, when they made the bullpen additions, Bednar, Doval, Bird, they were 21st in bullpen ERA prior to those additions. When they acquired all the guys that they did at the deadline, post July 31st, they were 25th in bullpen ERA. Just unacceptable, right? And this is a bullpen that the Yankees made no additions to in the offseason. None, right? Bednar, obviously, full year. Doval, full year. Jake Bird, if he's on the team this year because he was in AAA last year, full year. You lose Williams and Weaver. And the biggest thing people are saying is, well, it's addition by subtraction, losing Williams and Weaver. I mean, is it? Like, that's your best argument? That, well, we don't have 2 guys in our bullpen last year that blew games for us, so now it's addition by subtraction? That's your best argument for why the Yankees are a better team? To me, the bullpen is still a huge problem. Like, again, after you made the additions, you were worse. You were 25th in bullpen ERA versus 21st prior to the deadline, and you were bad the whole year. So what additions were made to help the bullpen? I don't see any. You talk about the rotation. Everybody is bullish on this team because they say, look at that rotation if the rotation is healthy. Two things. One, you have two guys in Garrett Cole and Clark Schmidt coming off of major reconstructive surgery. Tommy John surgery, of course. Obviously, we hope and we think that Garrett Cole specifically is going to come back and be the Garrett Cole that we saw prior to his Tommy John surgery. But how long is that going to take? How long is it going to take for Garrett Cole to be the Garrett Cole that we are accustomed to seeing? I'm not quite sure. And the other thing is, we talk about this rotation. Oh, it's the, look at that rotation when it's healthy. It's one of the best rotations in baseball. And a big argument I've heard is, well, you would sign up for what happened at the end of last year where you got into the playoffs against the Blue Jays. You would just hope that you either had home field advantage or you had Garrett Cole. 3 of the 4 guys that were in the rotation last year that are going to be in the big 4 in a playoff scenario this year are in the rotate. We're already in the rotation last year. Cam Schlittler, Max Fried, and Carlos Rodon, they all were already in that rotation. They were in the rotation that got knocked around the yard against the Toronto Blue Jays. They were already there. And yes, you had Garrett Cole, and we'll get to him later in some of the reasons to be optimistic. That is a huge addition for the Yankees to get Garrett Cole back in the saddle this year. Huge. But, people use the argument like, well, Max Fried goes out there in the playoffs, he's got to pitch better. You'll live with Max Fried in that spot, right? Max Fried is a guy who he's an ace. You trust him. And yeah, I agree. Max Fried can't go out in the playoffs again next year and give up, 7 runs in 3 innings like he did to the Blue Jays. You're not going to win if one of your top arms does that. But are we sure are we sure the result is going to be any different next postseason with Max Fried? Max Fried in his career, over 77 innings, so it's a big sample, right? I mean, it's like over a third of a full season. He has a 5.3 ERA in the postseason. Nowhere near what he is during the regular season, where he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. So at what point do we say this is a trend? The Yankees obviously made no really huge additions in their rotation. They're getting Garrett Cole back. They're getting Clark Schmidt back. But outside of Ryan Weathers, didn't really add anybody of substance. So that's the second thing. 3 of the 4 guys who are going to be in your projected playoff rotation were already there last year. It's not like a 2024 to 2025 Dodgers situation when they were like, hey, we're getting Ohtani back and we're getting Snell and like all these guys that they added to that mix. Glasnow as well. The Yankees had 3 of their 4 guys in the rotation last year. And the third thing is the lineup is just so Aaron Judge dependent. And you say, well, it's Aaron Judge dependent because he's this great player. Aaron Judge, his last 4 seasons, I pulled this up. His home run totals the past 4 seasons are 62 in 2022 when he won the MVP, 37, 58, 53. Now, I bring that up because those are 3 of the last 4 years for Aaron Judge. He has been a 10 WAR player. He is basically putting up prime Barry Bonds numbers in 3 of those 4 years. The 1 year where Aaron Judge only hit 37 home runs. I say only, right? It's still a great year, and he did it in like 110 games. The year he hit 37 home runs and wasn't this ridiculous MVP Barry Bonds level player, the Yankees missed the postseason. The Yankees' plan, part of their plan is not that Aaron Judge is going to be good. It's not even that Aaron Judge is going to be great. It's that Aaron Judge is going to be the best player in the league. It's that Aaron Judge is going to be an MVP. And as sad as it is to say, there will come a day where Aaron Judge is not hitting 60 home runs anymore. And he might hit 30 home runs. And he might hit 40 home runs. And those are still great years. But the Yankees have been reliant on Aaron Judge to the point where if he doesn't put up an MVP season, they miss the postseason, as they did in 2023. So, yes, the Yankees are running it back. And the Yankees have a really good team. And there's reasons to be optimistic, which we will get into. But Should I be happy with this offseason that the Yankees are the run it back Yankees, that that's their moniker going into 2026? I think for the reasons I listed, the bullpen not being any better and no major additions in the bullpen. The rotation being better because you get Garrett Cole back, but already three of your four top guns were in the rotation. And then the lineup is too Aaron Judge dependent. For those reasons, I don't believe the run it back mentality was the right mentality for the Yankees to take this offseason. I thought they had to make additional moves. And to me, the roster is not complete. And that's just my opinion on it. With that said, there is reason for optimism for the 2026 Yankees. And I've got three reasons here that we're going to go through. The three reasons for optimism for the 2026 Yankees. Number one is their lineup. And the reason I bring that up is when you look at the Game 4 of the ALDS lineup that the Yankees ran out there against the Toronto Blue Jays. Grisham center field, Judge right field, Bellinger left field, Giancarlo Stanton DH, Jazz Chisholm second base, Paul Goldschmidt first base, Ben Rice pinch hit for Goldschmidt in the game, Austin Wells catching, Anthony Volpe at shortstop, Jason Dominguez pinch hit for Volpe, Ryan McMahon third base, and Ahmed Rosario pinch hit for McMahon. All 12 guys I listed in the Game 4 lineup to end last season are back this year. And that is a good thing from an offensive perspective because the Yankees last year, they are returning an offense who was number one in runs scored, who was number one in OPS, who was number one in slugging percentage, who was top 5 in on-base percentage, who was top 10 in batting average. Every metric you look at, the Yankees were one of the best lineups in baseball last year over the course of the 162. And they're bringing that entire lineup back. And that's great news for the Yankees because, again, their offense and the depth of their offense was a strength of theirs last year. And they're bringing all those guys back. Huge reason for optimism for the 2026 Yankees. The second reason for optimism for the 2026 Yankees is the return of their ace, Garrett Cole. And getting Garrett Cole back, I can't tell you how happy I was to see him today, kind of walking through the hallway or whatever it is down in Tampa where the Yankees reported this, the pitchers and catchers reported the spring training today. Seeing Garrett Cole holding that, envelope or that, that manila folder that they do for the physicals and stuff. Seeing him back was a sight for sore eyes. And I cannot wait to watch him this year, whether it's May, whether it's June, whenever it is. I cannot wait to watch him this year. And the biggest thing about Garrett Cole coming back is what it means for the postseason. As I mentioned earlier, the Yankee rotation last year completely lost it. Completely crapped the bed in the postseason last year. Max Fried got shelled in the Toronto series, 7 runs in 3 innings. Carlos Rodon, we understand he was injured, but he did not pitch well. And Cam Schlittler, for as good as he pitched, was not great in the Toronto series. Garrett Cole, in his career, over a massive sample size, 130 career postseason innings the guy's pitched, he has a 2.77 career ERA in the postseason. You are getting a guy back that you're not getting a guy back that's going to help you in the middle of July. You're not getting a guy back that's going to help you in the middle of August. You're getting a guy back that in the middle of October, you can hand him the ball and you could say, this dude is going to give me a shot to win tonight. If all else fails, I know Garrett Cole is going to give me a shot to win tonight. And the Yankees did not have a pitcher on their team last year that you could say that about. And now they do again with the impending return of Garrett Cole later this year. The third reason for optimism about the New York Yankees going into 2026 is you're getting full seasons from the deadline acquisitions. David Bednar, who came over from the Pirates in the deadline deal and was really stabilized the closer role for the Yankees. He did an outstanding job. Had the performance in Texas where I believe he got like a 7-out save or a 6-out save. I think it was a 6-out save. But Bednar came over and immediately solidified that closer role. You've got him for a full year. So where you had a ton of uncertainty last year with the closer situation, with obviously Devin Williams collapsing and Luke Weaver couldn't get the job done and all the guys they tried. Now you have a closer and you have a really solid closer entering 2026. And then you look at guys like Ryan McMahon and Jose Caballero. Now, obviously, Caballero is going to take on um, an even more significant role this year because he is, he's the guy that's going to be the shortstop to start the season with Anthony Volpe on the shelf. And I mentioned McMahon, and look, I'm not going to sit there and lie and say I'm the biggest McMahon fan. I don't personally think McMahon is a very good hitter. However, he has a very low bar to clear, is what I would say. Last year, through the trade deadline, so through July 31st last year, the Yankees in third base OPS were 30th in the league at 543. That is hard to do. Let me say that again. Third baseman for the Yankees last year, through July 31st, had an OPS of 543. The combination of LeMahieu, who ended up getting DFA'd, Peraza, who is no longer on the team, and Oswaldo Cabrera, who is a light hitting player, was abysmal last year. Awful. Awful. And now you have a third baseman. You have a guy that's kind of similar to Bednar, is going to at least stabilize the position. Now, what can you get out of McMahon? That remains to be seen. But you have to hope and think that a full year of an actual third baseman is going to be better than whatever we got last year. Like I said, 540 OPS. It was an abomination. And I think you have to be optimistic that the deadline acquisitions that we brought over that did do well last year, you're going to get a full year out of them. So those are my reasons for optimism with the Yankees. And we'll get into a ton of stuff as spring training goes through. We'll do bold predictions. We'll do, we'll preview some stuff. We'll figure it out. We'll make it fun, and we'll do all those things. But to me, those are my reasons for optimism, and I think there are reasons to be optimistic about this team. I'm just not the biggest fan of the whole run it back thing because I think you're running back a team that has deficiencies. So that's my take there. Let's pivot to football. The Seahawks dominate the Patriots to win Super Bowl 60. Kenneth Walker wins the MVP, but obviously Sam Darnold, who was the former Jet quarterback, he is a Super Bowl champion. One of the better comeback stories we've ever seen. A guy who, 2 years ago was a backup quarterback, right? He backed up Brock Purdy in the 2023 Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. And then obviously he goes to Minnesota and he goes to Seattle. And 2 years later, he's standing on the podium as a Super Bowl champion. Just an incredible story. And really something that, you marvel in. Because this is a guy who, again, was ran out of town here by the Jets. Went to the Panthers. Went to the Niners. He basically went from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain in a 2-year span. It's one of the best stories we've ever seen. And props to Sam Darnold. And we're going to do a couple fun things today with football. One thing on New England, and then I will pivot to kind of our topic today for football. So New England obviously gets kind of destroyed in this game. They lose 29-13. It's not, and it wasn't even that close. It's not a competitive game. And obviously New England now is licking their wounds, and they've got to, you go all the way back down to the bottom. You're right there. You're in the Super Bowl. You go all the way back down to the bottom. And it's so easy to say, as a Patriot fan or someone covering the NFL, it's so easy to say, oh, the future's bright. Oh, they'll be back. The phrase "will be back" is the dumbest phrase in sports. If you look throughout history, and especially recent history, teams that have gotten close and that have had chances to win Super Bowls or get to a Super Bowl, when they have fallen short, even if they were early in their window or whatever you want to say, they have not gotten back to that point. There's 3 perfect examples in the NFL. Look at the Detroit Lions, right? Dan Campbell himself, when they lost that game to the Niners in the NFC Championship game a couple years ago when they had a big lead at halftime, and then they blew the lead, and Brock Purdy came back, and the Niners won that game, and they played in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Dan Campbell said after that game, hey, we might not get back here. Was he right? So far, he's been right. They haven't even gotten close to that point again of being up in the second half of an NFC Championship game. You look last year with the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, Dan Quinn, rookie QB, all the hype. They upset Detroit. They had this amazing run, and they lose in the NFC Championship game to the Eagles. And everybody coming into this year was like, "Oh man, Washington, they could be a Super Bowl team. Washington's a team to go over on. Washington's a team that's going to be a force to be reckoned with for years." This year they win 5 games, and you know you see scenarios like this consistently. The third one I was going to mention was the Cincinnati Bengals. They get to the Super Bowl in 2021. They're playing against the Rams. They've got a lead in the game. And the Rams ended up pulling it out. Obviously, Cooper Kupp catches the game-winning touchdown, and the Rams win the Super Bowl. And after that game, I remember everybody, the refrain from everybody was, the Bengals will be back. Don't worry, the Bengals will be back. They're in the beginning part of their window. They're young. Joe Burrow's young. They're going to be back. They haven't been back to the Super Bowl. That is the reality with we will be back. Is New England set up for success? Is New England in a position where you feel like they can be a team to be reckoned with for the next 5 years? Of course. But there is no guarantee, none, that they will be back in the Super Bowl. No guarantee. And the fact that they were there and laid as big of a dud as they did, that's going to sting for a long time. It should. People who I've heard some people from New England say, "Oh, it was amazing that we were even there." While that is correct, to put up the no-show that they did in that game, and to be that close to winning a Super Bowl and to fall short, there is no guarantee, because of everything we know about sports, there's no guarantee that they're going to be back. So that's what I wanted to say about the Patriots. But what we're going to do today is 2 things. So we're going to do an exercise after this where we compare the Seahawks drafting of the last 4 years to the Giants drafting of the last 4 years. Obviously, the Seahawks ran by John Snyder and the Giants run by Joe Schoen. And we're going to compare the two because I have a couple takes that I wanted to give out about that, and kind of about how great of a team the Seahawks build and all those things and all that stuff. So we will do that. What we're going to do first, though, is everybody's kind of throwing out their lists, right? Okay, where does Sam Darnold rank in the NFL now, quarterback-wise, after winning his first Lombardi Trophy? And I thought it would be a good exercise to look at the quarterbacks and the other 30 quarterbacks in the NFL, or whatever, the 32 quarterbacks in the NFL, and to look at each guy and to say, if I was starting a franchise today, not who's going to be the better player next year, if I was starting, not just that, obviously that goes into it, but that's not the only thing. If I was starting a franchise today, how many quarterbacks in the NFL would I take over Sam Darnold? So this takes everything into account. This takes into account contract. This takes into account how, their age. This takes into account how you feel about them as players, like everything. It takes into account everything. And what I came up with, there are 6 quarterbacks that I would take over. There are 6 quarterbacks, if I was starting an NFL franchise today, I would take over Sam Darnold. May, Allen, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Burrow, and Caleb Williams. Those are the 6 QBs I would take if I was starting an NFL franchise today over Sam Darnold. And I'll give some reasoning for each guy. Not going to go too in depth. Allen and Mahomes, I think it's self-explanatory. Josh Allen is the best player in the NFL right now. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, I understand he tore his ACL. I understand the numbers have been a little down the last couple of years. To me, if you look at him in big games, when he wants to be, I still think he can be just as good as Josh Allen and one of the best QBs in the game. So those guys to me are self-explanatory. Drake May, I got to give May a lot of credit. May was second in the MVP voting this year, in his second year without a number 1 receiver, without a true number 1 tight end, with a left tackle who couldn't block. There's a ton of reasons why I'm extremely impressed with Drake May. Now, was he good in the postseason? No, he was awful in the postseason. He was actually awful 4 straight games. And he's going to have to answer for that, and he's going to have to live with that. But I still can't ignore the fact that Drake May in his second year without a Jamar Chase or a Malik Neighbors or one of these alpha number one receivers, he was one vote away for being the MVP. I have to give him credit for that. Lamar Jackson. Look, Lamar is a guy who you're gonna ding him for the postseason. He's 3-5 in the postseason. He's got 10 touchdowns and 7 picks in those games, like an 85 or 86 rating in those games. Not been a good postseason player. It's well documented. The reality though is last year Lamar Jackson threw 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. There are not many QBs in the history of the game that can have seasons like that. So Lamar Jackson is a two-time MVP. He's not 35 years old. I'm still taking Lamar Jackson over Sam Darnold. Joe Burrow, again, I struggle with this one a little bit because of the injuries, but the reality is if I have an opportunity to get 7 great years out of Joe Burrow, I'm going to take them over Sam Darnold. I think Burrow has proven that at his best, he still might be the best pure passer in the NFL, and I think that matters. And I think that Joe Burrow is a guy who still is pretty easily a top 4 quarterback in the NFL. Forgetting even about like the future, I think next year he's a guy who could be a top 3 quarterback. Like that's the level of player he is. So I would have him over Darnold, and then the last guy was Caleb. And this one I really struggle with. I almost didn't write Caleb here, and there were a couple other guys that I left off the list that I considered. To me, when I look at Caleb, he's on his rookie contract. That's big because you've got 2 or 3 more years of him at a very controlled rate before he obviously gets paid, and that's huge in a salary cap league like the NFL. And to me, there are just plays that Caleb Williams can make. It's an eye test thing. I hear that. I think he was one of the worst quarterbacks this year in terms of completion percentage. There's numbers that don't really favor Caleb. But to me, it's an eye test thing. When you look at Caleb Williams and you watch him play, it's that 4th down play against the Rams, right? He can do things that nobody else on this planet can do. Literally, there's probably only 3 or 4 people on this planet that can make that play he made at the end of the 4th quarter against the Rams to tie that game. And he does that every week. He makes wild throws every week. And to me, when you look at the upside that you could get with Caleb, and you could have a guy who maybe could have like an Aaron Rodgers trajectory in his career, and a guy who to me is just still getting better and better every week, I would take him. If you gave me truth serum, who would I take if I was starting an NFL franchise today? Caleb Williams or Sam Darnold? I would take Caleb over Darnold. But those are the only 6. And the point I was trying to make here is Sam Darnold, no matter really how you slice it, he's a top 8 QB in the NFL. And I think that's if you're looking at just next year. I think that's if you're looking at the future. I think that's if you're doing any kind of list. He has to be in your top 8 or 9 names. He just has to be. I mean, what other QBs are you taking over Sam Darnold if you're starting an NFL franchise? This is a guy who's 25-5 over his last 2 years. Right, he's won 14 games, and this year he won 14 games last year. I think this year he won 13 or 14. He might have won 14 again this year. I mean, the guy is just unbelievable. He's 25-5 over his last 30 games. I don't mean the total record, but point remains, the guy has been really good the last 2 years, and I just don't think there's many QBs you would take over him. But yeah, I mean, let me know in the comments if you disagree, if you think. You'd rather have, I don't know, Jalen Hurts or Justin Herbert or Jordan Love. Those are some other guys that, obviously are QBs worth considering. But that's my list. Those are the 6 guys I would take over Sam Darnold right now if I was starting a franchise. So let's do the exercise with the Giants and the Seahawks draft comparison, and this is really where I kind of want to go with this. You're told as a football fan, you're schooled, right, as a student of the game, as a football fan, that when you're building an NFL team, you get the quarterback, and then you worry about everything else. That's what we've been told for years, right? You get the QB in the building, and then you build the team around the QB. And I think what you're starting to see over the last 2 years, where Jalen Hurts won the Super Bowl last year, and I don't believe Jalen Hurts is a top five quarterback in the league, as I just kind of mentioned. And then Sam Darnold won the Super Bowl, and I also don't believe Sam Darnold's a top five QB. You're starting to see teams win over great QBs. I'm not sure it works anymore to be like what the Bills tried to do this year, where it's like, well, we have Josh Allen and we don't have much else. We have Josh Allen and we have no receivers. We have Josh Allen, we don't have a line. Like, I don't think that really is working right now. And it's like the age old question, right? Like, would you rather get the quarterback first, or would you rather build the team and then drop in the quarterback? Now, it's very hard to do that. The Seahawks had unbelievably, they had a lot of fortune, to be fair, to get a guy like, for a guy like Darnold, who is good enough to be a top 10 quarterback, to even come available, I think was a gift for them, and they obviously made the move, and they deserve a ton of credit for that. But to me, it's becoming as important to build a great team, not just have a great player, not just have a great two players, build a great team. And people look at it and they say, well, why can't the Giants do what the Patriots did? Why can't the Giants go worst to first? Why can't the Giants go from 4 wins to the Super Bowl? I guess this is the point I'm trying to make to you. The Patriots went worst to first. The Patriots went from 4 wins to the Super Bowl. But they got in the Super Bowl and they looked like a team that did not belong on the same field as the Seahawks. And I think what I'm trying to say is, with the way the Giants have drafted, I'm not quite sure the Giants are going to be able to rebuild and get into Super Bowl contention. Not contention for the playoffs or anything, but like Super Bowl contention. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get there as quickly as you might think, just because they have John Harbaugh. Like, you've got to draft well. You've got to draft well multiple years in a row. And you see it with the Seahawks, and we'll go through it now. So here are the Seahawks last 4 drafts, because we're going to compare starting in 2022, because that was when Joe Schoen took over the reins as the as the Giants GM. And these are we're going to name 2 to 3 players a draft that are key names, and we'll go through the Seahawks and the Giants, and we'll compare. So going back to 2022, these are the key players the Seahawks drafted in each of these drafts. 2022, Charles Cross, Bo Maffa, and Kenneth Walker, who was a Super Bowl MVP. Devin Witherspoon, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Zach Charbonnet. That was 2023. 2024, Byron Murphy and A.J. Barner, who caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And then 2025, Gray Zabel and Nick Amanawari. Zabel obviously finished third in Offensive Rookie of the Year voting, which was ridiculous, by the way. Jackson Dart should have, finished higher than he did. But Zabel and Amanawari, great players, and they were both rookies this year. So that's what the Seahawks have done the last 4 years, to build a team that won the Super Bowl. Now, let's look at the Giants and Joe Schoen. Sorry, just pulling it up here. Okay, so 2022. Kayvon Thibodeau, Wan'Dale Robinson, Cordell Flott. 2023. Oh boy. Deontay Banks, John Michael Schmitz. 2024, Malik Neighbors, Drew Phillips, and Tyrone Tracy Jr. And then 2025, Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, and Cam Scadaboo. So that's the comparison, right? Between a Super Bowl team, a team that just hoisted the Lombardi Trophy, and a team that just won 4 games. And I think the point I'm trying to make is, the Giants are going to need, and it's gotten better. You can see it when you read off those drafts, the 2024 draft and the 2025 draft, certainly. 2025 being, I think, clearly the best draft he's had, and we'll obviously have to wait and see a little bit and see how Jackson Dart develops and Scadaboo and those guys. But you've seen the drafting improve from Joe Schoen. But he's going to have to stack drafts like that in order for the Giants to be a team that can actually compete for a championship. And is he one draft away? Is he a really good 2026 draft away from putting the Giants in that position? I maybe. I personally don't think so. I personally think it's two drafts. I personally think if he can have two drafts in a row where he's really, really nailing it, like he looks like he did the 2025 and somewhat in 2024, if he has a couple more drafts like that, then I think you're in a real position to compete for a championship. But the idea that John Harbaugh walks in, and look, John Harbaugh's going to change things. John Harbaugh's going to get the Giants winning. I have no doubt about that. But you see it with these turnarounds, with the Commanders, with the Patriots. They get to a point, you even saw it to a lesser extent with the Giants in 2022 when they brought in Dable and Shane for their first year. You get to a point where you run into a team that is just in a different class than you. And the Seahawks, there's no team that's in a different class than them. And so that's what the Giants are going to be up against, right? They obviously have some players, but if you're not drafting at the level that a team like Seattle, a team like Philly is drafting, you're going to get to a point where you have a ceiling. And the Patriots got there. There was just nowhere further to go for the Patriots. They maxed out. And it takes multiple years of really good drafting in order to build a team that can win a championship. A lot of it's coach, a lot of it's quarterback. That's still always going to be true. But the Seahawks proved it was important that they had a great cornerback in Witherspoon. It was important that they had a great, inside linebacker and safety play. And like all that stuff mattered for them to be a great football team. And to me, the Giants might not even be one draft away from that. They'd be close if they were able to have a really good draft this year. But again, you've got to draft well if you're going to win Super Bowls. And I'm not sure the Giants have drafted well enough to be in that position next year. Down the road, of course. But they've got to stack drafts. That's all I'm saying. Last thing, and then we'll get out of here. So, just a comment on the Knicks. And obviously the Knicks are playing tonight against the Philadelphia 76ers, before they go into the All-Star break. So we'll see how they do, tonight for their last game before the break. But, the Knicks lost last night to a Pacer team who was 13-40, and the Pacers are just, what a nemesis they are to the New York Knicks. I mean, they ended their season the last 2 years, and even when they're actively trying to lose games, they still show up to Madison Square Garden and give the Knicks all they can handle. And obviously they won the game yesterday. And I think, I tweeted this out. I think my overall take on the Knicks is simply I'm disappointed in the Knicks. Like, when this year started, I think a big reason for my optimism was what was going on for them, what was going on around them in the Eastern Conference. Jason Tatum out for the majority of the season, if not the whole season, with a torn Achilles. Tyrese Halliburton out for the whole season with a torn Achilles. And to me, I looked at that and said, holy cow, like the Knicks have a legitimate chance to win the Eastern Conference this year. And is there ever going to be a better opportunity than this year to win the Eastern Conference? And you look up at the All-Star break, they have a worse record than they did through the same amount of games last year. And they're on pace for 52 wins versus the 51 they won last year. They're basically on pace to have the exact same season. And I expected more. I expected more from a team that, again, we're not asking you to be a good team. We're asking you to be a championship team. And when I look at the way this season has gone, the lackadaisical nature and how they've played so many games just gives me pause that they can actually be a championship team. And that's disappointing to me because, again, you're going to wake up next year and the Pacers are going to have all their dudes back and Tatum's going to be back for Boston. And you're going to look up and you're going to be like, wait a minute, where do we even slot in? And this was supposed to be the Knicks' year. This was supposed to be their time. And they've kind of just plodded along. They've had good moments. They won the NBA Cup. They won 9 out of 10 recently. But they've also had just ridiculously terrible moments. Like losing 9 of 11 games. and losing to bad teams like the Kings and the Pacers, games that are going to bite them, in the ass in the standings. And it's just there's things about the Knicks that it's just a very annoying team to watch. Like Karl Anthony Towns yesterday, he makes the 2 free throws to get the game into overtime. And but then he goes out in overtime and he fouls out. And he's standing up there in the podium after the game and he's smiling like he wants a medal. Dude, you get paid $60 million. You made 2 free throws. Congratulations. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're paid to do. How about not leading the NBA in fouls? And it goes to this point. Tibbs was here. Brown was here. At some point, it's on the players. Like, do these guys have any backbone? Do they have any gumption? Do they, have the internal fortitude to say, look, we're not going to let this happen. We're going to go out and we're going to be whatever type of team we want to be. And I just don't understand how a team with supposedly the leadership they're supposed to have has had so many lapses like they had last night and like they've had throughout the season. So again, it's just not that the Knicks aren't a good team, not that the Knicks can't win the East. I think they can. I absolutely think they can win the East. It's a watered down East. They should be able to win it. But to me, it's been a disappointing season. An underwhelming season is how I would say it. So that's my take there. Okay, so that's the show. Thank you for everyone joining in. And obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a like for the video. Really helps us out. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll be back next week. And hope everyone has a good rest of their week. And see everyone soon.